Yay Networks.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Happily Ever Amber podcast. On today's episode, we have my longtime friend, Julie Solomon. I really wanted to bring Julie on because having my own business is not easy, but it's something that I love to do. It's something that is challenging. It's like a puzzle piece. Like there's all these different pieces that go into making a business, and it's fitting them all in. And I have always looked up to Julie. I think she has really figured out, coming from a PR standpoint into the influencer marketing, really being ahead of her time in so many different areas. I really feel like she understands it and she gets it. And I have seen through watching her for all these years, really help women understand their why, who they are, how to create your schedule, just your overall business strategy. I think she's brilliant when it comes to this stuff. So she's a brand and she's a pitch expert, which is so important to be able to pitch yourself these days. She offers guidance and different strategies to help in your business life, and the growth of your business. She's also a global keynote speaker, and she's a best-selling author of a book called How to Get What You Want, going from unseen to unstoppable. I'm really excited for you guys to hear this conversation, so let's jump in. Thank you, Julie. So good to see you. I'm so excited to have you on.
I'm so excited to be here with you. This is going to be fun.
Yeah. So I just kind of want to rewind the clock a little bit and talk about how you got started in helping creators build their brands, influencers, and how that foundation for your business started.
Yeah. So, it really started back in 2007 when I graduated college, and my first job out of college, I lived in New York City. I moved from Tennessee, where I'm from, to New York, and I worked as a publicist. So I started in music PR, did that for a couple of years, and then went into book PR. So I worked for a subsidiary of HarperCollins and did book PR and was on the, a lot of really big book launches, a lot of really big music launches before that. And so kind of cut my teeth in the more traditional in-house PR world. I worked for agencies and corporate. And then when I met Jonathan, my husband, who you've gotten to work with.
Yeah. I should have started with that. Yeah, I should have said that for those of you guys listening. So I know Julie because her husband and I worked on a movie together. And when I met her, when we were doing tour press, I don't know what it is. In life, you're just drawn to people. And I just thought you were the sweetest, raw, honest, down to earth. And I just totally connected with you. And I was like, this woman is a badass and she's beautiful and she has it all together. And so I always felt this connection. So that's the story.
And I think this was a decade ago. We've known each other for a long time. We were both pregnant. I was pregnant with Camden, who's now 10. Yep.
Yes.
I think I was farther along than you, but yeah, I think it was for Ray Donovan.
Yeah. So it would have been, oh my gosh. Yeah. So I was pregnant with Riley.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
2013, maybe.
Wow.
Something
time
like that.
flies.
Yes. I know. So yeah, so that's, and what's interesting is it was around that time. So I had done PR and I was still technically a publicist at that time, but I had moved to LA. John and I were having a baby. And LA at the time was starting bloggers and YouTubers and kind of what we know to be influencer marketers today. We didn't call it influencers at the time, but that started to become a thing. And in the beginning, I got into it because I had just had my son. I was new to LA. Because of my husband and what he did for a living, I got to meet amazing people like you, and I got to be a part of some things and things that I was also kind of used to as a publicist, right? Like premieres and events and things like that. But I started to have this awareness. I could see that more of the old landscape of PR was changing. it would always be there, but this new wave of like social media and creating content and that sort of thing was really starting to pop off. And I started to meet a lot of women in LA at the time that were bloggers, because I feel like every woman, when she moves to LA, like back then she would start a blog. Like that's what you do. It's like, I'm trying to become an actress or I'm trying to become a singer, but I'm going to start a blog first because I need to like figure out how to like make money. Yeah. So I started to meet a lot of really creative, awesome women in the content creation space. And I myself was getting into it just as a way to further my work, because I was also kind of getting burnt out at PR. I knew that I didn't want to go and work at like a PMK or something like that. Like I was kind of done, and I wanted to have more flexibility to be home with my son and to also be able to travel with John, because our life is at the mercy of a production schedule. And if he's on set and I'm working some corporate or agency job, let's just be real, we're never going to see each other. So I knew that I had to figure out a way to be adaptable. And so I started a blog, and because of my background in PR, I was able to monetize pretty quickly because I knew how to pitch, I knew how to talk the language, I knew how to understand marketing budgets, I knew how to build relationships. Like, for example, I would go to a blogger event in Los Angeles, and there would be all of these bloggers there, but they wouldn't be talking to the brands. And I'm like, why is no one talking? Like, the brands are the ones that have the money, not like your friend sitting in the corner. So I knew how to do that from my background in PR. And so I would like build the relationships. And so I started to actually monetize my content really before a lot of people were able to monetize. And what really was the catalyst was I was able to get a $250,000 home makeover with World Market. And it also included interior design services for free, like as a comped exchange, when I had less than 10,000 followers. And when that came out, I had a lot of like creators of mine, friends of mine being like, Julie, I don't mean to be rude, but like, and they were like, I have 150,000 followers, which at the time would have been like having 1 million today. You know, I have 150,000 followers. You have none. Like, how did you do this? And so that's when I kind of realized like, oh, I have an asset here. I have an understanding of something that other people need and other people want. And this is what I think I need to be doing. And it also gave me this opportunity to really start to pivot out of the PR world, because I was still doing PR at the time, because I still needed to like make money and pay bills and do that kind of stuff too. And so but I was trying to figure out, I didn't want to do PR work anymore. I was doing freelancing work at the time. And when I saw that, it really was the catalyst of like, oh, I need to start like helping. Instead of like being a blogger, I need to start helping these women that really want to be that. And then from there, you know, consulting, I would negotiate deals on the behalf of other content creators and influencers. And I'm happy to share more. But eventually I was kind of doing one-to-one, and then I reached capacity on that. And then that's really when I started diving into like online courses, and I started creating programs and coaching services and things like that to really help people figure out how to do this.
So crazy. Do you understand how smart you are? I mean, Jonathan must look at you and just say, babe, you're not only fucking hot, but you are brilliant and you're just like a whole package. I cannot believe you were doing all this stuff. You were way ahead of your time.
Yeah. I didn't even realize it either. And I think that a lot of us didn't at that time, because everything was so new. Like, you remember that era. And I think especially from your perspective as an actor, you're like, who are these YouTubers and content creators like taking jobs that like, you know, it was such a wild era of like, wow, these content, like there's something here. And I remember when like John was telling me that there was a show or something that he knew about, and it wasn't his role, but there was another role that somebody got the role just because they had 1 million followers. Like they weren't even really an actor. And it was like things like that. And even though that can be very frustrating, like as the wife of an actor, like it's very, very frustrating when someone spends their entire career working on their craft and then someone comes in and it's like, I have 1 million followers, I'm going to take your job.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
also, I was like, okay, something is happening here because
yeah.
the networks would not be giving this person a job unless there was value in that
Yeah, it's
follower
free
number.
distribution. That's what it is. It's
Exactly.
free
So it's like,
distribution built in. They're getting a 2-for-1 deal.
exactly. So I was like, there is something here. And I know a way to bring my world of PR marketing and branding and understanding that into this content creator world. And so it was this beautiful kind of mix of being in the right place at the right time. Like LA was the place to be for that in 2013. It was my background and understanding. And then, like you said, just kind of being ahead of my time and being really scrappy and like figuring out a way to monetize and to really just create a new business for myself.
I think that's really important for people who are starting a business or are stuck in a business that they're not, or an industry that they're not typically, or happy about, is that whatever you believe in, whether it's God, the universe, whatever your spiritual journey is, it's sometimes you need to be in this place right here, right now, and it's going to take you to the next place. And your experience, just like, through your example of being in PR, it's like, okay, it's time to pivot. I need to pivot because of my personal life. Like, it led you down this path, which is so beautiful. And you're happy and fulfilled and you're doing what you love and you're giving back to the world, which is the most important thing to do when we kind of figure out our why in this life. So I want people to realize that, like, if you feel stuck, you just have to just pause for a second and think, okay, like, trust the universe. So you never know what's going to happen. You might walk into a coffee shop. You might go to a school event. You might, go to a Pilates workout class and meet someone. You just never know.
It's so true. And I think that there's so much there that you just mentioned of, like, one of the things that I had to really tap into that I think I didn't realize at first is this idea of pivoting is I wasn't accepting how important my background and experience was in getting me to the next level. And it's because I wanted to leave that. Like, I no longer wanted to be a publicist. I didn't want to work in that. And, I wanted this new, bigger, shinier thing. But I remember at the time, John was like, you have to just like remain Julie publicist. Like, how can you use that to get to the next level? And I think I resisted that a lot. And I see a lot of people do that. They have a really hard time with the pivot of like, okay, but now how do I actually do that, Julie? Like, how do I go from what I'm doing now and I don't want to do it anymore to now doing this thing? And I think that the pause that you mentioned about like, well, let's really root into like, how has everything that you have been doing actually going to propel you to where it is that you're going?
Something that came up that I've been facing a lot in my life is when you make that pivot, it feels like there's two words that come up, is fear and failure. Like, oh, because I have to pivot, what I was just doing feels like a failure. And it's the fear of walking into a new chapter. And I think, I mean, wouldn't you say that that would be like the number one roadblock for most people that are facing that next chapter in their life, or possibly just, I don't know, even when it comes to creators, because that's your world, you're working with a lot of these creators.
Yeah. And I think the hardest thing for people with the pivot, and this is where the fear comes in, is they're afraid this thing right now that I don't want to be doing anymore is actually the thing that's making me money. And so how am I actually going to pivot and still make the money that I need to make in order to survive? And I think that's the hardest thing for people. And so what I did and what I really teach people to do, because there is a lot of that inner work and a lot of that fear and a lot of those things. But I think it's imperative that people start to realize that how you show up and present yourself or present your brand, like you've got your forward-facing marketing and messaging and what it is that you want people to believe about you. Like, what is the perception of what it is that you do and what you can offer and what you specialize in, versus like behind the scenes, what may be happening. And what I love to encourage people with is like when you're in a season of a pivot, it doesn't mean that you can't do other kinds of work, or it doesn't mean that you can't still be working on the thing that you no longer want to be working on. I think so many people get worried about the clients or the brands or the opportunities that they're going to have to say no to, but it's like, don't worry about that. Like you can keep those opportunities, those clients, those deals, that job for now, but just don't make it a part of the new direction of where you're going. Don't make it a part of the brand, of the messaging, of the marketing. Take it for now if it's making you money, but I want you to start acting as if and stepping into and talking about and owning what the new thing is going to be. And so it's like, I'll give you an example. When I was going through the pivot, and I kind of mentioned this, like I kind of found this magic that I had with understanding monetization, but I was still taking PR clients at the time. And they would pay me my retainer, which paid my bills and did what I needed to do. But it was like, I wouldn't really be talking about it. I wouldn't be out on Instagram, or I wouldn't be asking people for like, hey, I do PR. Hey, I want to help you launch your book. Hey, I want referrals for this. So even though I would still maybe take them if those things came to me, what I started focusing on was what it is that I wanted to do, not what was really making me money at the time, because I wanted to move away from that. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really important. So now you're at a point, and you through your experience, you wrote a book called Get What You Want and How to Go From Unseen to Unstoppable, which is a genius title. I love that so much. Tell me what inspired you to get to that point.
Yeah. So up until kind of what we talked about, like there was from 2013, from when like you and I met and I was still a publicist and like going through this pivot, it took me about 3 years. It took me from about 2013 to 2016 to actually make the full pivot. So 2013 to 2016, I was still taking on PR clients here and there when I wanted to, or really like needed to for the money. I just didn't talk about it. If you went to my Instagram, there was no PR on there at all, but I still had referrals and I still had people that knew me for that. I was consulting, I was managing, I was doing all of those things. But 2016 is when I was hitting my capacity, and I was like, okay, I really need to I've been pivoting and I now need to stake a claim. And that's when I created my first course that taught people essentially how to do what I did with the World Market deal. It teaches content creators how to take their content and monetize it to be able to work with brands. And more importantly, it teaches them how to pitch themselves instead of just waiting for an offer to come to them. As a publicist, that's all I did for clients for years is pitching. It's not just about sitting around and catching the offer. It's like, how are you actually pitching it out? And so that's what I was teaching people how to do. And so from that course, I started to become more known. I started to scale my business more. Instead of going one-to-one, I was going one-to-many. From that became my podcast, the Influencer Podcast, in 2017. And then in 2018, growing and scaling the business, I got an opportunity. I got a call actually from a publishing house, HarperCollins, which is really full circle moment because I used to work there.
Yeah.
And not in the same department, but they were just like, hey, and this was at the time where a lot of female development books were coming out that were really popular. There was a woman named Rachel Hollis that had a book come out that was broke book records, and they were looking for female voices and female thought leaders. And so I got an email in my inbox of hey, would you ever be interested in writing a book? And I was like, yeah, but I had no idea how to write. I knew how to market a book, but I had no idea how to write a book. I didn't have an agent. I didn't have any of that. And so I had this opportunity, but I had to start from scratch. I had to write a book proposal. I had to find an agent, which is a whole other process. Because a publishing house won't acquire you, even if they come to you and say, hey, would you be interested in this? You have to have an agent. They won't acquire a book deal without one. And so there was a lot of moving parts to that took several years. But I will say that I would have never gotten that email in my inbox if it wasn't for all of the work that I did to build up my own brand to that point. So that was actually one thing in my whole journey that I actually didn't have to pitch. I was able to kind of catch it, write the proposal, and then they got a first right of refusal. But that took several years to get the proposal done. And then COVID hit. So my book actually didn't even come out until 2022. So it took from 2018 to 2022 to actually have it all happen. But that's how it came about. And I think it all worked out the exact way that it was supposed to, because to be honest, I think in 2018, if I would have started writing the book then, it just wouldn't have been as strong of a book, because I still had a couple of years to like get some more stuff under my belt. So I do believe in like the divine timing of things, and it was all working out for me. But that was a part of the journey that if I didn't have all of those years of really being intentional about trying to build a brand, I would have never gotten that opportunity.
Yeah. So for the book, how does someone that feels unseen get the courage to put themselves out there?
Yeah. So this really starts from within. I mean, no one can make you feel seen if you don't feel that yourself. So there's actually one of my favorite lines in the book that I wrote is, you can't hide yourself and expect to be seen. And I think that that's what a lot of people, especially women, do, especially people online, that they're not really showing up. They're not taking risks. They're not leading with courage. They're not sharing the things that they want to share. You know, they're either hiding themselves by not sharing at all, or they're even kind of hiding themselves behind this mask of kind of curated authenticity, oversharing, I think this is going to be clickbaity, so I'll use this, or I think this is what's going to get me the likes, so I'll talk about this. But it's not real. Like that's why I call it curated authenticity. It is strategic authenticity. And so, to me, it's like, that's still a version of hiding. Yeah. And so you have to get to the core of like, who are you as a human being first? And then from that, who are you as a brand? Because to me, the definition of a brand is not a logo. It's not the content that you create. It's not the offer. It's your reputation. It's the perception that people have at whatever it is that you throw at them. And as long as what it is that you're throwing at them is aligned with you and like your values and your goals, then you're great. Most people get lost because it's not in alignment. And so I think the first step is the inner work of like really getting clear on who you are, what your purpose is, why you want to pick up your phone every day and create content, why you want to share your message or your story or your book or your whatever that is with the world. Get clear on that first and really ask yourself, like, am I hiding but expecting to be seen?
Yeah. And I think a lot of people are wanting to show a side to of them online, and it's very different than the life that they're leading behind. And finding out who you are, that takes a lot of work. I mean, for me, I'm thinking about the self and where I am in my life, just being a young mom, my kids, my life is so involved with my life and taking care of them a lot of the time solo. You don't really have time. Everyone's just trying to survive, whether you have a family or partner, that like having those moments, carving out time throughout your day. And I know you're a big, believer in scheduling and like really setting up your day for success, finding that time to really ask you those questions and getting to know who you are, right? Because I am not the person I was when you met me 10 years ago. Right. And I know that I'm not going to be the same person 10 years from now. So it's okay to always be we should be evolving, right? As humans and as women. And that's something that I think that, I don't know if it's important, but I love this idea of just being open and honest and finding your why.
I mean, the biggest issue that I see is like most people don't get what they want or can't get what they want because they don't believe that they're worthy of what it is that they're telling themselves that they want. And so it really goes back to this core worthiness piece that people have to get clear on. And it also goes back to checking the intentions of like, again, why you want to do it. It's for my own experience, sharing my story and putting myself online and to some degree in a public platform, It's because I felt like I had something important to say that I wanted to share, not for anyone else, but for me. And if people connected to that, and if it allowed someone to have a shift in their perspective, or if it inspired them in some way, if it supports them in some way, that is great. But I am not doing it with the intention of getting some kind of worthiness or validation from my externals. And that for me was the big shift, because I used to be that person. Like everything that I would do is because I didn't feel worthy enough. I was constantly waiting for my externals to change. I was constantly waiting to be accepted or valued or validated or chosen by the outside world. And then once that happened, then I would be worthy enough.
Yeah.
But
I mean, as an actor,
that's your whole life.
that's my whole life. I'm just like, am I worthy? Like going in, is it a yes or no? And honestly, I wouldn't wish that upon anyone, especially my own kids, like having the pick me. And I've had to do a lot of work on myself. And it's so crazy. Jenna Kramer posted the other day of something that she didn't get. And she was, and I just know her through Instagram. And when I saw her, I literally got like gut punched, and I saw her face, and I was like, I wrote her, and I was just like, I get that moment.
I know it. Right.
I know that moment.
Yeah.
And oh my God, you're going to be okay, but just be okay. Like accepting it. I just, that moment when I saw her face, I was like, holy moly, I get that. I've been there 1,000 times with so many jobs that I wanted that I didn't get, but it's just that constant, it's a tough industry in general. But if you go into my room right now, I have this huge whiteboard, and literally my word of the year is, or the words of the year, I'm worthy, because that's a huge part. It's just knowing that we're worthy. And that's whether someone else needs to hear that, or just having that mantra when you have that moment throughout the day where you get that no, or you wake up and your inner dialogue is just self-deprecating and you're being mean to yourself and beating yourself up. Just have that word of like, I'm worthy, or, I got this, or whatever it is. Because those words really, you need to retrain your brain to be able to know that you can and you will. So,
yep. And that's where that deeper purpose comes from, because like your purpose, your why for wanting to do what it is that you're wanting to do has to be greater than any excuse that you would have for not doing it, any form of external things that we can't control, and I think it's so hard, and I think that's something that actors and I think content creators have in common, is this like pick me piece and this worthiness piece. And I'll say it all the time. I say this to people of like, you've got to be clear on like, check your intentions. Like if you want to become TikTok famous to be famous, like it's not going to be an easy road. And I think that because I'm married to someone who in his past he's had very public divorces and very, splashed all over magazines and just very private things that have been chewed up and spit out by so many people. I saw the other side of that, the really gross, dark, ugly side of that can happen. And I never wanted a piece of that. And so I think that for people that don't really understand how fleeting fame is and how dark it can be, like you really have to check your intentions and like your integrity as to why you want to show up and like make an impact in the world, because it should be about that.
You have to know who you are, because they will paint you in 1,000 different ways, but like you just have to drown out that noise all the time.
And that's where the worthiness comes back in. Because if you feel worthy, then it's like the rest is just noise.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have a quick question.
Yes.
In a world where, sorry, just my brain went for a second. In a world where like there's so if you're wanting to become a content creator today, if you're wanting to become a podcaster, if you're whatever industry you want to get into, and that there's 1,000 people, it's a flooded industry. How do you get the courage? How do you stand out? What would you say to someone if I came to you and I want to be an influencer today?
Yeah. I mean, the first thing is that you've got to like change the mindset shift of like, it's so saturated, right? Because it's like walk down a bread aisle. Like,
Yeah.
there's all different kinds of bread. Bread's been around for thousands of years and people keep making bread. In fact, you want to be in a competitive industry. You don't want to be in a dying industry. Like, no one wants to be in the newspaper industry right now. It's a dying industry. You want to be in an industry that is growing, evolving, saturated. People are clamoring to get into it because that's where the energy, the money, the impact, that's where the juice is. So you have to see that as a positive and not as a negative. And that's the mindset. And then the next step is like, again, you have to get really clear on who you are as a brand, your brand values, which simply put, it's like, what do I offer? Why is that important? Who am I offering it to? And why should they care? And like, it sounds like 4 really simple questions, but if you can't answer those 4, most people that I see have a problem with growth, with brand growth, or even getting started, is they don't know what they're offering, they don't know who it's for, and they don't know why they are uniquely the best person to offer that to somebody. And so you've got to really get down and dirty with like, what is that specialty that you're bringing to the table? What is your unique special sauce that you bring to the bread aisle? And, and how are you making that your thing? Because there's always going to be competition. There's always going to be someone who is bigger and better with more money to spend on ads and more this and more that. And so you've got to just keep the blinders on and get really clear on those questions first. And then from that, it's that perception piece. It's that positive perception of marketing and messaging and really strengthening your muscle in that, because that's influence, that's sales. And we're all selling something, whether we want to admit it or not, or believe it or not, like we're all selling something. And so we might as well get really good at it and get really integral with it and stop telling ourselves that like, it's sleazy, it's slimy. Again, like I'm hiding myself, but expecting to be seen. Like just start owning those pieces, because no one else is going to toot your own horn if you're not even willing to do it.
No. And you can never, I always say, if you want something done, just do it yourself. Don't expect someone to, yes, you need a team, but if you really want something done or to be heard, just start. Don't wait for the phone call. Don't wait for it. Just start today. Like that's one of the biggest lessons I've learned in my life. Okay. So I have one question to wrap this up from someone that asked, they said, I'm frustrated by the slow growth of my business. When will you know it's time to let go of this business? That's a really good question.
That is a good question. So I would actually have a question posed back to this person that would be, it's time to let go of your business if you don't feel lit up by your business anymore. So my question to her is, do you still feel lit up? If you don't, that's your sign. If you do still feel lit up and you want to see this thing work, but you're not growing, so that's not giving you the confidence in seeing it out, then it sounds to me like you probably just have like a strategy issue that you need to figure out. So that would be the first question. If you're still lit up, then great. My next question would be like, how long have you been doing this? What have you tried that has worked well? What have you tried that's like not ever again am I doing this? What seems to connect, what seems not to connect. And then going back to those questions that I asked earlier about like, are you clear on your brand values? I think a lot of times what people do is that they try to jump to creating content or monetizing content before they've even developed any kind of brand messaging or brand strategy. And that's why they don't grow. But because they don't take the time to really lay that foundation, and they start trying to kind of throw spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks, and then they don't see growth, then they feel like something's wrong with them. When really nothing's wrong with you. You just didn't you're trying to like build and live in a house that literally has no foundation. So like, let's go lay the foundation first, and then we can actually build the house. So that would be kind of my twofold there for that question.
I love that. Well, thank you so much. And can you tell everybody who wants to get your book, wants to find you on socials, which I'll link everything here, but just for everyone so they know where to find you.
Yes. So I tend to hang out most on Instagram. I'm at Jules, Juls, Solomon, Solomon there. My book, Get What You Want, is wherever books are sold. There's also a great Audible that's like 2.5 hours to get through at most. So I know this is a podcast. People love to listen. So I love to plug the Audible. People loved the Audible of the book and still do. And then I have a podcast, the Influencer Podcast. So if you're wanting more, growth strategy, brand strategy, influencer marketing support, that is a great free resource for you. And then my website, juliesolomon.net, just to learn more about me and the programs that I offer.
Yay. I love your podcast. Guys, go listen to the podcast. It is so.
We need to have you on the podcast.
Thank you, everybody. I hope you guys really enjoy that episode. One of the things that I loved hearing Julie talk about was pivoting, coming from the PR world, pivoting into this because she wanted to, she had to, for whatever reasons that you have to pivot in life. Julie did it in such a graceful way. She took all of her knowledge that she learned doing PR and working with a publisher, and then took that knowledge and applied it to a new business that was starting to really pop when like blogging happened. Influencer marketing was just like, I think she even said like we didn't even call it influencer marketing. I really, really love that. And I think having that in your back of your mind going, it is okay to pivot. It really is okay to pivot. Look, it took her 4 years to launch her book because of COVID. And that's okay. Like she needed those 4 years. The universe gave her a couple more years because she needed to add something else to the book that she didn't have at the time. And I just love that. I think there's so much to learn from this episode. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Please don't forget to like and subscribe and share these episodes and podcasts to anyone who you think could benefit to listening to them. Till next time. Thank you.